Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we are continuing our journey to rank the top 10 players at every position by ranking the top 10 power forwards in the NBA today. As we have talked about numerous times now, today's NBA can be very positionless in many ways. Sometimes you fall into a big wing archetype, and does that make you a 3 or does that make you a 4? We had to make judgment calls on that. Sometimes you have guys who are sort of these modern hybrid bigs who can play the 4 or the 5, so we had to make decisions on those guys. So what I would say is, if there's anybody in this episode who you're screaming about, oh my God, how are they not here, who we don't mention at all, they were probably either on our small forward list or they're probably going to be on or mentioned in our center list. Because before we get into the actual top 10, we will shout out our toughest cuts right now. Logan, who are those honorable mentions for you?
So this guy obviously is the talent of a top 10 power forward. He's probably the talent of a easily top 5 power forward, I would say. I don't have Zion Williamson on my list. I have him omitted just because the guy can't stay healthy. And traditionally, I don't know about if I'd say traditionally. Normally, I'm kind of 50-50 with guys who stay injured on whether they qualify for these lists, whether they don't. For example, Kawhi or Embiid. Zion to me is like in a different class of his own, where he just has such a long track record of not being available that I am going to hold it against him. Zion's played in just 43.4% of his potential games since he entered the NBA. I might make that the standard moving forward, but the guy has played less than 50% of his potential games. So it's I just, at this point in his career, I stayed optimistic for a long time that he'd be able to figure this out and he'd be able to stay healthy. But I think we're going into year 7 this year. I just kind of feel like I know what I'm going to get with the Zion Williamson experience. He's probably only going to play 30 to 40 games. Now, I wish him the best. I hope that this year he can play close to a complete season. This isn't anything against Zion, the basketball player. He is an absolute freak of nature, one of the most ridiculous and unique athletes we've ever seen. He's dominant when he's available. He just is never available. So he is clearly far and away the first cut to me. And then the next guy, he just had a really down year. And that's Lauri Markkanen. I just feel like he had a bad season. He didn't rebound as well. He didn't score the ball as efficiently as he did last season. He was a really, really good offensive engine, I would say, 2 years ago, and I think he would have been a shoo-in for the list. But after a down year, I omitted him from my list as well. So I think those two guys were definitely the toughest cuts for me. Zion's obviously a unique case.
Yeah, so it's good that you bring that up because I do think it's important to clarify the criteria that we're using for these lists. So there's obviously the potential criteria you can use, which is I am ranking these players based on who do I want most over the course of an 82-game season and a subsequent playoff run if we get there, accounting for availability, right? Just who do I think brings the most overall value in that time? And then there's the criteria of I am ranking these players purely based upon who I think delivers the most value when they're on the floor. Who is the best basketball player, period. The latter is my criteria. I'm not accounting for availability. In fact, when I'm talking about guys who I want for the upcoming 82-game season, I have players on my list who are not going to play this coming season. Tyrese Haliburton is not going to play. He was on my point guard list. Jayson Tatum, spoiler alert, is on my power forward list. He's not going to play. So considering that is my criteria, I think it would be inconsistent for me not to have Zion here, so he is on my list.
I did have Haliburton on my point guards list. I do have Tatum on this list as well. Zion to me is just again, it's different. It's like those guys suffered season-ending injuries. They're going to come back at some point. Zion's just never healthy. So, again, ability-wise, he's a no-brainer top 5 guy on this list. But I do feel like he is the we call Tatum the anomaly. Zion's kind of the anomaly here.
He is. That being said, I'm ranking everybody. I had Kawhi on my small forward list. I'm going to have Embiid on my center list, which it's going to be weird to judge him just because when he did play this year, he wasn't even himself as we've known him. But like I said, I am presuming health for everybody and evaluating them based on how good they are when healthy and on the court. That being said, Lowry was probably my toughest cut as well. I've been a really big fan of his over the years. I think that he is somebody who is hyper efficient and brings such phenomenal off-ball value and such elite shooting at his size. I mean, he's really got this incredible off-ball gravity and play finishing skill set, and then also has some real value as a self-creator, as a scorer as well. Obviously not somebody who's going to bring you much playmaking value, but can just fit in as a hyper-efficient, productive scorer who works anywhere and basically elevates any offense. And I did a really nice job of improving a couple of Utah offenses that had lackluster supporting casts. But the reality is the position is pretty strong. He did have a down year. If you look at the last 3 years, though, he is giving you 23, 8, and 2 on 62% true shooting. So I did still consider him, but having not shot the ball as well as we're used to this past year, being not the level of creator or passer that basically everybody else on this list is, and not being an impactful defensive player, not being a very impactful rebounder this past year, it was just hard for me to justify putting him on considering what we saw from him this past season. The other tough cuts for me, Scotty Barnes is not on my list. I'm just not high on Scotty. I think there's a lot of clunkiness with his offense, and I think there's a reason that he's very inefficient just as an offensive player, period. I mean, 52% true shooting this year. He is below average efficiency in terms of pick and roll, post up, isolation. He's never been somebody who is able to really leverage physical advantages into super easy offense. And at the same time, he's somebody who's always struggled with touch shot making, who's always struggled as a jump shooter, like shooting 27% from deep, low 40s on 2-pointers that don't come right at the rim. I understand the all-around value with him with the playmaking feel and the rebounding, and maybe if he was maxing out his defensive potential that I saw in him as a prospect, I could have him on this list. But right now, again, just the position is too strong, and I'm much less confident in his offense than the guys who I have in my 9 and 10 spots. And then I'd like to shout out Jalen Johnson, because that is a guy who I'm extremely high on, who I thought had a phenomenal season this past year before unfortunately suffering an injury, but was averaging 19, 10, and 5 on decent efficiency, 57% true shooting, but also bringing plus defense. Just a really versatile all-around basketball player, a guy who can bring you some perimeter defensive value, who brings you some interior defensive value as a secondary rim protector, who offensively can be a play finisher for you as a roller, who's really, really good in transition, and then who also has developed a lot as a ball handler, being somebody who can legitimately initiate offense, play make for you. So he does a lot well, but I think it comes down to the lack still of that star level offensive value from him yet, where the guys who I do have above him on this list have more consistent paths to leveraging their way into more production offensively, more efficiency, and that's where Jalen still just has a little bit of a ways to go to be on the top 10 of this list for me. Also, shout out Draymond, still one of the best defensive players on the planet. I just think his offensive limitations are a little bit too severe for me to have him on this list. So, with all of those shout outs given, Logan, who is in your number 10 spot?
I have Julius Randle in my 10 spot. And last season, my power forwards list would have had a restraining order against Julius Randle. He would have been nowhere close to this list. But I think you have to be really encouraged by what you saw out of Julius Randle this season with Minnesota. In the regular season, he gave you 19, 7, and 5 on 59.3% true shooting. In the playoffs, the final round from them against Oklahoma City was disappointing. Some of the numbers are a little bit inflated, but overall he gave you 22, 6, and 5 on 62.2% true shooting. And the biggest thing to me with Julius is throughout the year, Julius continued to find a way to really fit in with Minnesota, where he wasn't, this horrendous ball stopper. And with Julius, right, sometimes it can be a game-to-game basis, and he'll have his bad moments and his bad games at some points. But I felt like, by and large, Julius really committed to playing team basketball, really committed to picking his spots, and not trying to dominate and be this kind of black hole that sometimes we know that Julius Randle can be. I thought he was really committed to playing his role and fitting in. And Julius is a really high-level mismatch attacker. He's really good on the block and in the post. He's a good rebounder. He's improved as a ball handler as well and as a self-creator. And my one thing with Julius is I wish he could just buy in defensively and really be committed on that end, because I think he's got all the tools, right? He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the strength. You know, he's not going to be able to match up against some of these really tall fours, but he could still be impactful. I think the biggest gap with Randle between what he could be and what he is, for the most part, just engagement and staying consistently engaged. And I think sometimes you still do see some of those tendencies rear their ugly head, where if he's struggling offensively, he can kind of phase out defensively. But like I said, I was probably one of the lowest people on the planet when it came to Julius Randle last season, and I think you have to be encouraged about what you got out of him this year and what he could be next season. I will say, I think the guy in my number 9 spot is probably not going to be on your list, and it is probably one of my wilder takes.
Oh.
There's definitely a substantial offensive gap between Randle and the guy in my 9 spot in terms of self-creation and what they can do with the ball in their hands, but I think the guy in my number 9 spot is just a real winner, and he's a guy that I want on my team, and I think he raises the ceiling of a team, and he's got a unique kind of all-around skill set. So I don't think he's going to be on your list. I understand people pushing back. I would just rather have him on my team. As much as Randle has grown on me, and even though I think he's clearly the better offensive player, I would rather have the guy in my 9 spot.
Well, Logan, I got to say, you have me very intrigued. I'm wondering who that is. But for now, I have Randle in my 10 spot as well. And I do think that this was pretty clearly the best basketball he's ever played. I understand he has the All-NBA season in 2021, the best jump shooting season of his career. But if you compare the postseason performance from that year to this year, I just think you clearly see a more developed, refined, smarter, better version of Julius Randle. The playoffs is really where he sells me on securing a spot on this list. And honestly, I thought that it was pretty clear that he was going to have to be in my 10 spot. He just became the best version of himself up to this point, which is this really good mismatch attacking bully ball forward, somebody who can punish switches, somebody who can punish a whole lot of one-on-one matchups in isolation, out of the post, with his physicality, with his pretty good intermediate shot making. And that is an important part of it, because one of the up and down parts of the Julius Randle experience over the years has been his jump shooting, where it's like, okay, he's a bad jump shooter his entire career. Then all of a sudden, hold on, he's shooting 41% from 3 in 2021, and then he's back down to 31%, and like there's always been some volatility there. This was the second best jump shooting year of his career, though. I mean, about 35% from 3, and shot it really well in the playoffs, and a pretty good mid-range shooting season as well. So that was valuable for him this year. Also, easily the best passing postseason of his career. Randle has also consistently been up and down as a passer. He's somebody who has the ability as an advantage creator with his size and strength to pressure the paint and collapse defenses, and he's capable of making the reads and necessary passes, but there are times where he can be that black hole ball stopper, turnover machine, get in a more selfish mode, as you mentioned. But I thought overall in these playoffs, I mean, if you look at the Lakers and Warriors series, both, he was repeatedly tested as a playmaker. He was dared to be a passer first and foremost, and I thought that he did a really good job overall of creating for his teammates in those 2 series, and also was very effective as a scorer in those 2 series. And just overall, I thought it was the most versatile and effective we've ever seen him. He was used more as a screener this year to pretty good effect. Overall, he did a really nice job of adjusting to a new spot, and he just got better and better as the year went along, and really played his best basketball in the playoffs. Now, obviously, it ends on a very sour note for him, because the OKC series was a disaster, and as you hinted at, Logan, it's even worse than the raw numbers would reflect. I mean, 3 of the 5 games were truly F- stuff from him. His stats end up looking good in game 5, but those all came in the second half when it was already a 30-plus point game. It was over. He was terrible in the first half of that game. But although he has his flaws, and he does, I also think full context is needed to understand that OKC is an all-time defense. And basically every single star who faced them in the playoffs saw a significant drop-off in their production and their efficiency. So, yes, you do understand that if you have a defense that has a number of feisty-ass, switchable guys who can deal with him physically out of the post, who can front him, who can make it difficult to get him the ball, guys who can stay in front of him with their quickness, who can swipe at his handle and can draw offensive fouls. And then if they also have the speed to double really effectively without getting punished in forced turnovers like that, like, yes, that's when you can expose Julius Randle as being something of a ball stopper, as being something of a turnover machine, as being somebody who, if he can't play bully ball, doesn't have a ton of options to turn to for offense. But there's not that many teams that can do that. And the Thunder are the best equipped to do that. So if we're going to judge everybody by how they play against the Thunder, well, we're going to end up being pretty damn hard on everybody, and we're not really going to get an accurate picture. So yes, he has his flaws, and some of the same issues are not just offense related. Obviously, the below average defense is a problem, and absolutely part of it is motor with him and at times becoming disengaged, especially if he's frustrated with his offense. But also, like, he just has clear limitations. Like, he's not quick enough to guard on the perimeter at above average level. He's very ground bound, so he doesn't provide any sort of help defense value around the rim. Like, really, his only value defensively is being a good defensive rebounder, but he can put his head down. He can kind of go into black hole mode. And the OKC series was so tough for him because, like, yeah, there are stretches where he's forcing the issue and he's turning the ball over and over again, but it's also kind of like that's his only path to offense. So how hard can I be on him for trying to make an impact in that game and in that series? Like, that showed the downside with him, but I don't think it's an indictment completely of who Julius Randle is as a basketball player when you look at the previous two series, and it was really impressive. I do think you can look at a better player in a similar archetype, like a Pascal Siakam, who was able to find more ways to be successful against that OKC defense, who was able to get more easy stuff in transition, and who was a bit more versatile and was more efficient, was able to rely on his over-the-top shot making a bit more, didn't have to necessarily try to bull his way into the paint where things can get really dangerous, or catch with deep position where they can make it so hard to get the ball. Like, Siakam just was a little bit more composed and overall much better in that matchup. But Siakam's also a really good player, and Siakam's higher on this list for a reason. So I land on Randle here. I think that even with some of the flaws offensively, he's ultimately too talented, too gifted as a scorer and as a creator to be left off my list. Like, I think he's levels above Scotty Barnes offensively. I think that as a creator, he has a clear advantage over a Lauri Markkanen coming off a down year. Certainly a much more productive, skilled offensive player than Jalen Johnson. And so even with the bad, I think the good has to put him on this list.
Definitely.
You crazy son of a bitch. Who are you about to say at number 9?
Do you have a guess?
I actually don't.
I don't know how crazy this is. Because it's like, don't get me wrong. I want to clarify something. If I was starting my team from scratch, I would I think I'd take Randle. I think I'd take some of the guys I left off my list.
Are you about to say Naz Reid?
I've got Aaron Gordon at my 9 spot.
Oh, okay. I don't think that's insane.
I just think he's so valuable in a winning context. I think that he does so many things at such a high level, and the level that he reached as a jump shooter this past season has made him a really dangerous and unique offensive kind of weapon. The one big difference between Gordon and Randle, while I was comfortable with making this distinction, is Gordon can actually take on that lead defensive role if the opposing team has a big wing kind of ball handler, right, where you see him matched up against a Kawhi Leonard, and you can trust him with those matchups and trust him to fight and to work. I mean, he's really committed on that end. He may not be the best defender on the planet or anything like that, but he's always going to give you maximum effort, and he's such a good athlete and such a good mover of his feet that he can hang with those guys, and he's so strong that you're not just going to be able to barrel and go through him. But it's really the the all-around impact and the versatility that he gives you. He is an elite transition scorer. He is a phenomenal cutter. He was a really efficient roll man this last season, and he was really dangerous as a spot-up player. He shot 44% from deep in the regular season, and he shot 38% from deep in the playoffs. In the regular season, he was giving you just under 15 points per game on 65% true shooting, and in the playoffs, he upped that to 16 on 60% true shooting. Still really, really efficient. And so that's just the distinction I would make. It's like me putting Caruso higher than some other guys on my shooting guards list. I really value Gordon as one of the best role players in all of basketball. And if I'm building a winning basketball team, I'm taking Gordon on my team in a heartbeat. I think he fits with a lot of different guys. Now, obviously, I want to make this point too. He's got a much easier offensive job because of the situation that he is in. He is like, especially with the added shooting value, he is like the perfect guy that you could put alongside a guy like Jokic because he's got great basketball instincts. He is a phenomenal cutter, and he is an elite, lob threat. So Jokic does spoon feed him some easy attempts just off the cut and stuff like that. So I think that is important to mention. All that being said, I just think he brings you complete value across the board, offensively and defensively. So I think it's my craziest take of today, but I really do like Gordon, and that's why he's in my 9 spot.
Look, man, I actually don't think it's that crazy, and I had Aaron Gordon down as an honorable mention, and I just forgot to mention him, but I love Aaron Gordon, and you really can't overstate how significant his improvement as a jump shooter is. It is up there for the most impressive late career jump shooting improvement I've ever seen. In one season, went from a 29% three-point shooter on basically half the volume to almost 44%. And obviously the leap was proven in terms of its validity in the playoffs when this guy is hitting a number of massive threes, but it's also proven by his improvement everywhere as a jump shooter. He went from being like in the 30s as a mid-range shooter to being a 50% mid-range shooter. He went from being a 66% free throw shooter to an 81% free throw shooter. So now when you're talking about a guy who is legitimately a high-level three-point shooter and who is also such a productive offensive rebounder where he's just a monster in the playoffs. I mean, 3.6 offensive boards a game this past year in the playoffs, and who does have some of that mismatch attacking in his game, and who does have solid passing feel, and who is one of the best cutting and play finishing forwards in that sort of dunker spot cutter role that there is in basketball today, and who is a legitimate plus versatile defender. Aaron Gordon is a winner. Now, would his offense be the same if he were not playing in Denver? No. Like, would he be giving you 15 points per game on 65% true shooting? He wouldn't be that efficient, but his improvement as a shooter is significant, and I think it's enough to definitely justify having him on this list. Like, I'll still lean on the star creation that I'm getting from a Julius Randle, but I think there are a lot of situations in which I would rather have Aaron Gordon. Like, truly, it depends on roster construction. Do I need somebody who can be a number 3? Then I want Aaron Gordon. Do I need somebody who can be a number 2, who can carry a bigger load? Then I want Julius Randle.
I think that's an important point to make that you're making about Jokic, just because he is, I think you see this with like because he gets so many high-quality looks just off of the gravity of Jokic and that elite two-man game. I do think you see that reflected in somebody like, KCP. Obviously, that's super drastic, but it's like he's getting wide open looks and he shoots the cover off the basketball in Denver. Carson, he shot 48% off the catch in the regular season, and then he shot 40% off the catch in the playoffs, man. That is absolutely ridiculous, man.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you consider who he was as a shooter 1 year earlier and throughout his career, basically.
I will say almost 70% of his three-pointers are wide open, so I do think that's a factor. I don't want to diminish any of the growth that he's made because he is a legitimately great shooter of the basketball now, but I do think that's important to mention when you're talking about the percentages and how great he was. He's always getting a very high shot quality. I do think that speaks to his shot selection, his ability to get open too, but a lot of that is manufactured by his role in the offense.
Well, and also by scheme. I mean, for years, the philosophy of a lot of defenses was, we'll roam off of Aaron Gordon. and will effectively ignore him so we can be doubling Jokic aggressively, or so we can put a big forward on Jokic and then have our actual center as the backline defender roaming off of Aaron Gordon. Like, he doesn't have to be suddenly, shooting 54 from tray ball, pulling hang pulls. That would be OD. All he's got to do is make the open ones, and he's making the open ones at a really good clip. So shout out Aaron Gordon, Logan. I don't hate the mention. I am a big fan of his. In my number 9 spot, though, I do have somebody who's definitely got bigger raw production. That's Paolo Banchero, who this past year in the regular season averaged 26, 7, and 5 on 55% true shooting. Then in the playoffs, 29, 8, and 4 on 52% true shooting. So again, big box score numbers here. But evaluating Paolo is always trickier than just looking at the box score, because there's the difference between what he can be, the potential that he possesses, and what he actually is on a game-to-game basis right now. Because here's the thing. As a downhill bully ball power forward, Paolo Banchero is an absolute monster. He is 6'10", at least 250, and an absolute freight train who can go through you, who possesses unique agility and ball handling for being this absolute monster of a human being. Guy gets to the line 8.5 times a game, and I believe gets fouled on the highest percentage of his drives of anybody in basketball. So that ability that he has is an A-plus trait. But the thing is, he doesn't leverage that A-plus trait nearly as much as you would like. 3/4 of Paolo's shots come from outside the restricted area, and almost half of his shots overall are 2-pointers outside the restricted area. This is a true mid-range fiend. And unfortunately, he's just okay at those shots. He shoots 41% on those shots, which is not a shot diet that can be like the basis, the core aspect of a really efficient offensive player. And then the rest of his shots are threes, on which he shoots 32%. So he's an inefficient jump shooter overall, and yet he loves his jumpers. Now, part of this, his tendency to settle and live on a more jump shot heavy diet than you would maybe like from a guy who's 6'10", 250, is definitely that he's in a bad situation. And he has to deal with some ridiculously crowded paints. And he has the worst three-point shooting team alongside him, at least he did this past year, right? They were dead last in threes made, dead last in three-point percentage. Outside of Franz Wagner, no creators alongside him. So he's got this huge offensive burden, and he's got terrible spacing. And so you have to understand that, like, when you're looking at packed paints with 4 or 5 defenders in there, and you don't really trust your teammates to knock down open catch and shoot looks if you make the kick out pass, like, yeah, you probably are going to take some more tough mid-range jumpers than you would in a better situation. At the same time, it is absolutely also partly Paolo's inherent tendencies and preferences. There are possessions where they clear the side, and he has good spacing, and he has a legitimate mismatch, a smaller player, and all the same, he goes to that sort of 14, 15-foot turnaround. That's something that we've seen from him over the years that hasn't really changed, and that does have to get better, that shot selection, because right now, Paolo's just not that good of a shooter. Like, again, that can't be the aspect of his offense that he's relying on most as a scorer. I also think Paolo is quite a gifted passer for his size. That's always been a reason that I'm not the highest on Paolo, because some people are really, really high on Paolo, but I'm also not one of these people who comes out and says, oh, Paolo's actually not good, or Paolo's not going to be a top 15 kind of player. One of the reasons that I hold out hope with him for reaching his ceiling is because of his passing ability, but also he has to be more consistent there. And especially if you look at the playoffs, he was very, very score first. There's a complicated aspect to that too, because like, it's hard to really blame him for not trusting his teammates offensively when the situation is that bad. But nevertheless, more often than not, I think you're right to make the correct pass to the open player more so than you are forcing the tough shot yourself. And so I'd like to see him strike that balance a little bit more. So this is kind of how I feel about Paolo overall in a number of different ways. Like, he looks the part, right? Number 1 overall pick, really unique skill set. The upside is immense, and I think we can all see that. But the impact isn't yet what some people want you to think it is. And it isn't maybe what the raw box score would tell you. And in fact, what the Paolo detractors will point to is last 2 years, we have this huge sample now where Orlando is better than a plus 11 net team when Franz is on the court without Paolo, and they're just a plus 2 net team when they're both out there together, and they're a negative 6 net team with Paolo on, Franz off. It's a 17-point swing between their two respective young stars without the other.
What website did you calculate that off
Data
of?
Baller.
Really? Maybe my math is off. I calculated 18.9.
Well, maybe I was rounding or something, or maybe it was a garbage time.
But it's still
that's a massive number.
Ridiculous.
If it's 17 or 19, that's a massive, massive swing. So right now, it's like, yes, Paolo is a low efficiency, solid playmaking, mediocre defender who's also pretty ball dominant, but you also have to understand the context he's playing in offensively. I really am optimistic that the Bane addition is going to make life easier on him and maybe help him develop and refine some of this stuff. And also, there is value in just being able to eat up the volume that he can offensively. Like, to be able to go into a playoff series against the Celtics and say, okay, yeah, it's not going to be super efficient, and maybe I'm not going to be as selfless as you would like, but I can at least give you 29, 8, and 4. Like, I'm capable of putting myself in positions to score. No, that's not what you're looking for when it comes to winning a title. You're not looking at the guy who can just give you volume on 52% true shooting, but that's not the spot the Magic are in. They are truly a talent-starved offense, and everything falls on Paolo and Franz to find a way to be productive and remotely efficient in that environment. So, like I said, it's a big balancing act. Ultimately, some people will probably think this is too low. I don't think it is, until Paolo does refine some of this stuff, get a little better with the shot selection, get more efficient, get more consistent as a playmaker. Then I think he can soar a few spots on this list. But for now, there are guys who just are more impactful in terms of two-way stuff, are more efficient, and I have all of them above Paolo.
I completely agree. I have Paolo in my 8 spot. I think this is a very nuanced subject. I think you did a really good job of summing it up. But I think this is probably going to gain our most I think this is going to be the thing that's most contentious among people who watch it, because they will look at the raw numbers, and there's still this attribution error, I think, with Paolo and why the Magic are great. And I think Paolo's going to be a really great player in the future. I think he has that kind of ceiling that you're talking about, top 15 kind of player. The Magic team is still great because their defense is one of the best in the NBA, and that's the bedrock and the foundation of this team. The one thing that I'm going to continue to monitor with Paolo is how much he really is getting downhill. And I think that is a great point that you make about the hellish situation that he's in. I have said this stat a million times, but it is staggering that a team as good as the Magic record-wise had the most games in the NBA under 100 points. Like, that's really concerning. And so I think it's important to mention the situation, but 21.3% of Paolo's shots came from inside 3 feet. That's a career low for Paolo in his 3rd season. 29.9% of his shots are coming from behind the arc. That is a career high for Paolo. And it's like, I would, obviously they're very different athletes and very different players, but the guy I would point to is a guy like De'Aaron Fox, where Fox has this A1 trait, and it is his quickness and his speed and his ability to get downhill to the rim. As he continues to get older and older, he becomes more and more reliant on that jump shot, and less of his shots come from all the way at the cup or inside the paint. That is what I'm going to continue to monitor with Paolo, because if we're still having these issues in 2 to 3 years, or if these numbers get inflated even more, where he's not getting his downhill and he falls in love more and more with his jump shot, that's where this is going to become a sticking point with Paolo as a basketball player, and it's a major, major concern. All that being said, he has got this ridiculous physical skill set. He is uber talented. It is just so rare that you have this kind of combination of size and skill in a player. He has got a great handle for a player his size. I do think he's a good playmaker for how young he is and his archetype. And it is still extremely impressive that a player this young can put up this kind of volume. Mm-hmm. All that being said, when we're talking about an ultimate winning context, there are guys that I think just have a higher winning impact. And so I agree. That's why Paolo's all the way down here for me.
It's so funny. I feel like we are literally just going in the pattern of positive point criticism with Paolo. Like, because it does feel like everything kind of balances out to the point where, yeah, he is the ninth best power forward in basketball right now, because I think another important point to mention when you're looking at this season is the oblique injury, because before the oblique injury, and it was only 5 games, but that was the best basketball he's ever played. And it wasn't just, okay, he put up 29, 9, and 6 in a 5-game sample size because he was shooting the shit out of the ball, right? Or like something that could be an outlier from a super small sample size. It was the most effective bully ball he's ever played. I mean, you look at the last couple games before he gets hurt. 13 of 17 inside the arc against Indiana, and took 22 free throws in the game. I mean, was just truly a grown man playing amongst boys. Then the next game, he goes 10 of 13 inside the arc. I mean, he's got multiple games in double-digit free throws in this stretch. And then you're dealing with an oblique injury, and you have to try to find a way back into rhythm within the season, and that's not easy to do. So that's where you consider that, and that he's 22 years old, and I don't think it's at all impossible that we see a leap from Paolo this year. But also, like you say, these things do have to improve. Like if Paolo just remains some version of this player, and obviously we'll get a little bit better, but if some of these core things don't really get ironed out, then I would be disappointed, because I think that he has more potential to be an actual driver of winning and more of a true offensive engine, because we're talking about this really terrible offensive situation, right? And it is terrible. And then you look up in last 2 years, that terrible offense is a little bit worse with Paolo on the floor than when he's off it. So there are just other guys who I think you could drop in that situation, and they would be able to do more to elevate it right now. The circumstances are hard, but Paolo does also bear some responsibility for this being one of the flat out worst offenses in basketball. Like, there are a number of players in the NBA who you put on any offense in the league and they can actually bring you to a respectable floor. Paolo's not one of those guys yet. So you have him at number 8. In my 8th spot, I have Jaren Jackson Jr. And I have a feeling that this is going to be one that probably pisses people off, particularly because of the small sample size stuff that we saw in the playoffs, where Paolo, again, wasn't efficient, but was overall impressive and shot the ball really well from 3 and was productive in the box score. And Triple J, I mean, was just flat out terrible. I mean, there's no two ways about that. But as I was talking about with Julius Randle, who had such a good first 2 rounds of the postseason, I don't want to fully write that off, because the best defense we've seen in multiple decades had him in hell. Similarly with Triple J, like, I'm not just going to write off his all NBA caliber season, and I thought he should have been all NBA, because he had a really bad series against the Thunder. Again, if you're going to judge everybody based on their performance versus OKC, you're basically going to think that everybody sucks, or you're going to think everybody is significantly worse than they actually are, because that's what they do to people. Some players have the misfortune of facing OKC in a high-profile spot in a playoff series, and others are lucky and they get to avoid that. But yeah, if you have a brutal playoff series, it's going to really negatively affect the public opinion of you, sometimes probably too much, and sometimes without all of the necessary context to really understand why things went how they did. Now, did the OKC series highlight the flaws that exist in Triple J's game? Absolutely. Just like I said with Julius Randle, right? That is undeniable. And I highlighted this going in to the Thunder series. Even as somebody who's been very high on Triple J this past year, I was really impressed by him. I talked about this during the season. Like, the major concerns for him are, okay, if you can switch a bunch of hyper-physical, feisty defenders on him who he can't bully and who can get up in his handle and challenge him there, like, he'll struggle. He, like Randle, is predicated upon mismatch attacking, playing bully ball. The Oklahoma City Thunder, as a defense, are mismatch proof, basically. Everybody on the floor can defend their ass off. Everybody is pretty big, pretty athletic, pretty long. And even like the smaller guys are Alex Caruso, who can guard centers because he's an absolute psychopath. And even if they end up in a matchup where they actually do have an advantage one-on-one, that's when this is a team that has unparalleled speed and length and an ability to double and recover and really test your playmaking and force you into turnovers like that. So that's the thing. The Thunder have all of those things that you need to trouble a Triple J in droves. They have the number of dudes who can guard him one-on-one. They have the elite speed and hands to double him and pester him. And it is a problem, his passing. Like, if I'm any team, I would basically be throwing a shit ton of doubles at Triple J in a playoff series. Honestly, more so than the Thunder did, because the Thunder didn't have to send a ton of doubles, But when they did have to send doubles, they were actually successful in doing so. And they just really, really took him out of his element. Like, they executed the formula to a T because they can do that. But I would say for everyone else, it's much easier said than done to do what OKC just did to Triple J. And like, this dude is a top 20 scorer and a top 12-ish defender on the planet. Like, that combination is rare. To have that sort of elite scoring value as an elite defensive big, and not just play finishing value, but to be first and foremost actually a self-creator, a mismatch attacker, a post-up and isolation hub, that's really valuable. And per 36 minutes, Triple J averaged 27 points this past year on over 59% true shooting. He was one of the most productive per minute scorers in basketball. And like I said, does most of it out of the post and isolation. He's big, he's strong. He had a really improved handle this past year. Really good body control, right? Really effective spin move. Gets to the line at a great rate. But his superpower is all of that combined with elite touch. 51% in the paint outside the restricted area on massive volume. Like, that is the bread and butter of his offense. And the hooks and the floaters are so money that he can live off of those shots. And again, he does also get to the rim, and he does get to the line at a very good rate, and he can shoot the three, but he's so great on those short range touch shots. And it's not just the percentage that sells short how lethal his game is there, because he is flat out the most ambidextrous touch shot maker in basketball today. Left and right both. He is ridiculously efficient. So you put all that together, and then he shoots 37% from deep this past year. Like, the OKC series was really ugly, but for most of the year, Triple J was a nightmare to guard. It was incredibly difficult to find a player who could deal with his combination of physicality, skill, size, athleticism. And that was the offensive development. But defensively, like, he's always been one of the best on the planet. He's a ridiculously good rim protector. He's got really good hands, one of the better bigs at generating steals. He's got really good versatility. He has his flaws there too. He is foul prone. He is a bad rebounder. And so this is the dilemma with Triple J we've talked about for a long time, right? Ideally, offensively, you'd like him at the 5 where he can play in a super spaced out environment. Defensively, you want him at the 4 because you need somebody who can anchor the glass at a higher level, particularly. And you need somebody who's a better pure drop defender than Triple J is. But at the 4, he's one of the best defensive players on the planet. And overall, he was the best player for a Memphis team that won 48 games this year. And not just that, like, he had to carry the load for a lot of the year without Ja. And in the minutes he was on the floor without Ja, Memphis was a +5 net team. And in the games that he played without Ja, they were 17 and 14. Like, he was the best two-way player in totality on the year. He delivered the most overall value on both sides of the ball, considering Ja's availability issues, for a team that was legitimately good and for a whole lot of the year was a top 4 seed before, you know, they went into an identity crisis late in the year. So he's flawed. He's always been flawed, but he got a lot better this year. And I think that, unfortunately, that's kind of gotten covered up and forgotten after how the OKC series went, because although he has his flaws, he also has his A-plus traits. And he just had an amazing regular season. And again, I know that a lot of people will look at the Paolo stuff and they'll say, oh, well, how could you have Triple J above him? The gap in defensive value is massive between these two. Absolutely massive. And as scorers, I mean, call me crazy, man, I think that I would probably slightly lean Triple J right now. Now, as offensive players, I want Paolo because he's so much better as a passer. That's the problem with Triple J, is his passing. But to be as productive, to be significantly more efficient as a scorer like he was, he's a hell of a tough player to guard unless you have ridiculous defensive personnel. But regardless, the case is basically Paolo isn't impactful enough. He's not refined enough offensively yet to outweigh that two-way edge that I think Triple J has.
I have a feeling we're going to get back to stride for stride this episode. I have Triple J in my 7 spot.
It's so comforting after the mayhem of the small forward episode.
That was kind of awesome, man. I love that episode.
Awesome. No, that was great.
Only thing I disagree with what you just said was I do think I would prefer Paolo as a scorer and as an offensive player, but I completely agree.
Hold on. I do prefer Paolo as an offensive player.
Well, no, I know you said, but you said you don't prefer
Yeah.
him as a scorer. I would prefer Paolo as a scorer too. And
Yeah.
I
can
just
see the case because I think that he can assert himself with more volume no matter what because of the pull-up shooting aspect of it.
I just think and his handle's better. Like, I just think that he's a little bit harder to match up with than a guy like Triple J. But
I think, can I restate what I said actually?
sure.
Paolo has a higher floor as a scorer because no matter what, again, he is going to be able to, as a creator, get to spots that he's reasonably comfortable from. And maybe it's not efficient, but he'll put up 25, 27 points a game. You can have Triple J only put up 13, 15 points a game. But I think the ceiling with Triple J, when you have a team that can't guard him, his ability to possession after possession generate that hyper-efficient offense out of the post and isolation, that I prefer to Paolo. And I think, over the course of the year, there were so many great scoring games from Triple J, and then he walked into his absolute nightmare matchup.
I wouldn't count Triple J out from getting even better next season. I think that's completely on the table. Like, he took a really major leap 2 years ago into this year. I thought he got better this last season. Like, who's to say that Triple J can't fix some of these flaws? And, that is the other side of this coin is hopefully Triple J took something away from this Oklahoma City series and says, okay, I need to work on this. I need to, he knows what he needs to address now. I don't want to sell short any of the improvement. He was 12th in drive points per game this last season at 9.3. And the two-way value it's a huge gap, I think, between him and Paolo. Like, the Magic defense is great with or without Paolo. Like that, Paolo is not driving that side of the basketball. Triple J completely is. And he was 6th in stocks per game this last season, averaging 1.5 blocks per game and 1.2 steals per game. And he was 4th in defensive field goal percentage inside 6 feet, 49.7%. Excuse me. That's the 4th best mark among big men. But still, that's a ridiculous number. And just right now, if I was starting a team, if I was starting from scratch, not that Triple J doesn't have his flaws. I think you laid it out. Like the playmaking limitations, I think the rebounding limitations are huge. Like,
yeah,
he's bad. He is really bad in those areas. Like, he is a remarkably bad rebounder for a guy his size. He is just a poor passer and playmaker, and he has terrible court vision. But, like you mentioned, he is great at these other things, and you can't take those things for granted. And the playoffs were ugly, but like you said, man, it's like the Thunder are going to do that to everybody, man. So I'm not stressing about that. Well, they didn't do it to the guy in my 6th spot, but that's why he's there.
Well, Logan, here we are. We're going stride for stride, like you said. I've got Spicy P at number 7, and I think what an impressive postseason for him overall. Not just the Thunder series, like the fact that he was basically the one star they faced the entire playoffs whose production and efficiency didn't crater against them relative to their standards, because I know people are going to say, oh, Jokic had a couple masterpieces against them, and he did. He also had several of the worst games of his playoff career and had way more turnovers and way fewer assists and was less efficient, and compared to the standard he's set for himself as the best offensive player ever, in my opinion, that was as rough a playoff series as he's had in his career. Siakam was the one dude who was like basically giving you his normal production. And overall, in the playoffs, 20.5 points, 6.5 boards, 3.5 assists per game on 60% true shooting with legit plus defense. I love Siakam. I love how he plays. And for a few years, he has been this hyper versatile, efficient, really awesome scoring forward who is elite in transition, who is this post-up and isolation monster, who has this really difficult combination of fluidity, body control, physicality, finishing, really good intermediate scoring to guard. Like, I'm talking about how Triple J is a matchup problem. Well, Siakam is more so, because Siakam also has, I would say, a deeper bag. Siakam has the ability to get to the turnaround stuff, and right where he doesn't have to operate deep into the paint to be effective. It's just extremely difficult to find a defender who has the combination of quickness and size and strength needed to guard him. He's like a walking mismatch, and then also obviously has the advantage of being a legitimately solid playmaker. So he can keep defenses honest more so in that way. That's who he's been for a few years. This year, though, he improved in a couple ways on top of that. And the first real improvement he made was as a three-point shooter. Siakam shot 40% from deep this year between the regular season and playoffs. That's a great number. And that's on legitimate volume. And he especially made a huge improvement on above the break threes, where he went from being like a 30% shooter to a 40% shooter basically in one season, which makes him even more effective as a pick and popper, where he's quite good, and especially where playing in the two-man game with Hallie, obviously it's mostly Miles Turner who they use as a screener and popper, but Siakam is really effective when utilized in that way as well, and then obviously he can play off the catch as well, attack closeouts and whatnot. But the improvement of that three-point shot was big, and he took a step up defensively, because Siakam has been a guy who for some years, as he took on a bigger offensive role, I think his defense dropped off. But you've looked at him and he's got the tools, he's got the agility, he's got the size, he's got the length to be a really impactful defender, but he hadn't necessarily been that. This year, I thought he really took a step forward, as did Indiana's whole team defense. But the playoffs, I was truly impressed. Like, he held opposing players 7% below their average field goal percentage at the rim. He was a legitimately impactful backline help defender. It's just the best basketball he's played. And then I also think Indiana is offensive utopia for basically anybody, but particularly in transition, where Siakam is so great, playing at such a fast pace with such a phenomenal outlet and hit-ahead passer like Hallie has allowed Siakam to truly max out that transition value. Like, how many times in these playoffs did we see straight up leak out? Siakam just beats everybody else down the floor and Hallie finds him with an outlet pass, and that's a layup. I mean, his playoff scoring in transition was phenomenal, and that's an advantage he has over everybody else we've talked about, right? Randle is somebody who is not going to give you a ton of transition value, and so you can sort of bog his game down more to the half court. Same goes for Paolo. Orlando plays at a super slow pace. He's part of that. In fact, I'd like to see Paolo be more up and down playing in transition, because that's where he can be so effective. Siakam is a guy who is going to play with that really fast pace, and that's where, as a great athlete in the full court, he is so effective. So I'm just super impressed by him. I think that he was maybe the player who rose by the most in my playoff rankings, like between the start of the playoffs and after. I always liked Siakam, but I love him now, and I like him even more. And I do think, compared to everybody else, like, he's the most refined, best combination. Like, I think as a scorer, he's more matchup proof than a Julius Randle. He proved that. He's also a more efficient, more versatile scorer than a Paolo Banchero right now, while being a more impactful defender than both those guys. And then versus Triple J, no, he's not Triple J defensively, but he's a plus defender who is a better all-around offensive player, more versatile, better scorer, better passer. He's just like one of the great all-around forwards in basketball right now. And so I think that he has very much earned this spot.
Well said. I mean, he really is giving you complete value, scoring at all three levels efficiently, on ball and off ball. He was an 83rd percentile isolation scorer. He was a 72nd percentile post-up scorer. And the key word to me that you hit on, Carson, was matchup proof. Like, you just have to have a guy that can match up with him, and not a lot of guys can't. I couldn't believe how effective he was against Oklahoma City. Like, to not dip against that defense, it really speaks volumes about, where Pascal has grown. And so he is giving you this tremendous scoring value efficiently. He's bringing you some supplemental playmaking value. He's bringing you rebounding. He's bringing you defense. I've been super impressed with Siakam. And just like, I think it's going to take Triple J and Paolo, refining their offensive skill sets for them to be over Siakam. Because I look at Siakam as a genuine offensive number two, like championship caliber offensive number two. I think we saw that. I don't feel that way. I hate talking bad about Paolo, but I don't feel anywhere close to like that about Paolo, right?
In that way.
I don't feel anywhere close to that level about Triple J. Siakam, as my Robin, as my second guy, I really do believe in him at a high level, and I know he's going to thrive and succeed in that role.
Yeah, I agree. So you've got him at 6. I guess the ball is back in my court. I've got my beloved Evan Mobley here. God, is he so wonderful. Just an incredible season he had. Incredible season. All NBA. Well-deserved. Regular season gave you 19, 9, and 3 on 63% true shooting, and that's in just 30 minutes per game. Worth considering that per minute, that number is so impressive, his production. And in the playoffs, 17, 8, and 2 on 70% true shooting. really damn good efficiency, and the production was pretty similar. He made so many leaps this past year. Maybe the most significant was his improvement as a three-point shooter, though. And I think the playoffs really validated that, where he had a good three-point shooting regular season, but to go into the playoffs, and even on a small sample size, shooting 45% on 4 attempts per game, compared to years previous, like that is just so significant. To be able to make three-point shots against closeouts, to be able to knock down those open looks to keep the defense honest, just so important, so valuable for him, especially playing at the 4 as he's being asked to do. Having that improved perimeter game is so significant, and that's really where he improved overall. I mean, it's not just the three-point shot, it's his ability to initiate actions, his improvement as a ball handler, as a driver, as somebody who can legitimately run inverted pick and roll for you, as somebody who can be a handoff hub, as somebody who in transition can grab and go full court and is honestly one of the most effective bigs in basketball in that mold. And then also got better as an interior scorer. I think improved his strength, improved his ability to be a mismatch attacker. I still wish that he was a little bit more efficient out of the post. I wish that his interior touch was a little bit more consistent, but nevertheless, he put himself in a position where he's more effective now, so punishing smaller players when they're guarding him than ever before. And he is a good passing big. I think they tapped into that value more this past year, all while he's also a hyper efficient play finisher, right? Super fluid, getting to the basket as a cutter, attacking the offensive glass, as a roll man, very efficient across all those play types. Really good, versatile, all-around offensive big, who is then also the defensive player of the year and is a top 5 defender alive and is, in my opinion, a top 2 most switchable big in basketball. I mean, his ability to check guards in stretches, to check big wings, like we have seen this numerous times over the years. To me, the 2024 postseason was actually probably where Mobley hangs his hat most defensively, because they're putting him on Paolo, and he held Paolo to a pretty low shooting percentage when he was his primary defender, somewhere like in the high 30s. And then he did the same thing to Jayson Tatum in that matchup. Like just his combination of being able to move his feet at such a high level, having a frame where he can absorb a blow and stick with you, having his incredible length to be able to affect shots, so gifted guarding on the perimeter, and then also one of the better rim protectors in basketball. I think he wasn't quite as effective there in this past postseason as he was in 2024, when I thought, I mean, he made a case for being the best defender in that postseason, but he's still very, very good there. And he also is good enough as a rebounder to legitimately anchor the glass at the 5 or at the 4 to deliver really, really good rebounding value. So in so many ways, he's like the ideal modern big, you know, without being an absolute fucking freak outlier offensive talent or whatever. This is why I loved him so much as a prospect. I mean, I've been a Mobley Glazer ever since he was a prospect. He was my favorite guy in his class. In fact, I thought he was the best guy that we'd seen in a long time at that point. And this was the year in which he like realized that potential in so many different ways. And yet he can still get better in all of these ways. He can continue to improve as a ball handler and self-creator, continue to add strength, continue to improve as a touch shot maker, continue to improve as a three-point shooter. Like there is so much ability there for a guy who is still just 24 years old, just turned 24, and who was already the best regular season player on a 64-win team. Like, I think with his two-way value, he was the most irreplaceable guy for them throughout the regular season, and they were dominant. And the playoffs, I can't say were quite as smooth as the regular season, and I thought that there were certain instances in which you felt like he wasn't quite as comfortable initiating from the perimeter. And this is natural. And we saw the same thing with Chet to a more dramatic degree. But it's like these 7-footers who can handle are so impressive. And then you get into the playoffs and the defense is more physical and it's more intense. And like your handle is tested to a different degree. But I thought even though Mobley experienced a bit of that, overall, I thought it was encouraging for his offense. I mean, the fact that he was still productive and extremely efficient and he shot the ball that well, like, if anything, I just wish that they had involved him a little bit more. And obviously, he also got banged up in the Pacers series, which is unfortunate. But I didn't see anything in the playoffs that would make me lower on Evan Mobley. And in the regular season, he was playing like a top 15 kind of player. So the reality is, we're talking about him as a power forward. Evan Mobley at the 5 is going to feed the people in a generational way. And once Jared Allen is eventually gone, may he rest in peace. I'm saying that with anticipation. He's still in Cleveland for now. Mobley at the 5 is going to be fully unlocked because defensively, he's a phenomenal anchor at the 5. Like, he's not like Triple J where he has to be at the 4. No, he is a really good drop defender. He is a really good defensive rebounder. He has everything you need to anchor the 5 defensively. And then offensively, it's great that he has the perimeter skill that he does, but the more that you can give him those play finishing opportunities around the rim, he's just going to be more productive, more efficient. The better you make the spacing around him. Per 75 possessions, when he's on the floor without Allen, so when he's at the 5, he averages 24, 12, and 4 on better than 64% true shooting, and the Cavs are a plus 11.5 net team. So someday we will see that, and we will have Evan Mobley on the center list, where I've always thought he would eventually end up. But for now, he's played power forward his entire career, so I think he belongs there. But he's just too impactful to be lower than this. I could see the Siakam case because of the offensive value, but not really. I mean, you're shaking your head, Logan, and I agree.
No,
with
you
you.
couldn't. I know you. You couldn't.
Well, I'm trying to be understanding here. I'm trying to be amenable. But ultimately, no, Evan Mobley is God's gift to this earth. He is a different level of regular season valuable player because of his ability to anchor a defense and be so elite on that side of the ball. And the offensive versatility is still really impressive. Like, it's just insane. It's insane. He is a really, really unique talent. And I love watching the guy play, and I thought he had just a phenomenal season.
He's one of these modern-day unicorns. And
yeah,
you mentioned the per 100 possession stats. I mean, the thing I was going to counter with is I think it's imminent that he's going to be hovering around 25 points per game. I don't know if he'll ever be a 25-point-per-game scorer, but I think 23, 24 is definitely attainable, especially with the two areas of offense that I thought we saw the biggest leap from Mobley was just his feel and his confidence. Like, Evan Mobley 2-3 years ago is shooting, maybe a 3 a game, and he's not doing it confidently whatsoever. He is stepping into shots off the catch confidently. He shot 39% off the catch this last season. He shot, as you mentioned, 37% from deep on 3.2 attempts per game. In that dunker spot and as a roll man, he is super effective and so hard to stop. But it really is the nuance and how methodical he is now. Like, Evan Mobley hitting a pump fake and then getting into his shot, or, handling from the perimeter and getting down and like it's right now it's been very steady, and and I just think he's going to keep getting better and better with more experience, where I was going to say I think he could be number 1 on this list one day, but because he is going to move to the center spot, I still don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, man. I could see it. I think it's going to be him and Chet, probably and Wemby. Duh. Wemby's going to hold it down. But, I mean, him and Chet are probably going to be battling for that 2 spot. And
my goats.
I think there's so much more room to tap into. Now, I think the areas where we need to see him improve, that intermediate touch, which isn't as big of a deal for a guy like Mobley because he's so big. Like, he doesn't need to settle for those looks, right? If he was a guard, those are shots you're going to have to hit. He's so long that, I mean, he can just get to the basket with such ease that, like, that's never going to be something, that would be like garnish or stuff. But that's the one area.
Hook shots, it's nice to be a little more
the
efficient
touch
there when you're attacking a mismatch.
He's 40% in the paint non-restricted area. He's 24% out of the mid-range. So that would provide him a nice counter. But I don't think he necessarily needs that to be a great offensive player. That being said, I think we're scratching the surface. Like, I think we got a glimpse of what Mobley's going to look like, but there's a lot there, man. There's a lot there that I think he's growing into.
I agree. I don't know how you can look at the improvement that he made this past year and look at all the tools that he has and say, okay, we're seeing Evan Mobley at his best right now. Like, no chance. He's going to get better. The question is just how much better. But what a winner already in such an extremely valuable archetype to be one of the best defenders on the planet, one of the most efficient play finishers on the planet, who can also create for yourself in different ways and be a positive playmaker at your position. It's a freakish talent. And you mentioned Chet. These are my guys, man. These are the two guys who I've been utterly obsessed with ever since they were prospects because I couldn't believe that that's what big men were going to look like in today's NBA. And then Wemby came in and he stole all the headlines, understandably so. But all of those guys were my favorite prospects in their class. All of them I thought were flat out special talents. And I do think that Chet and Mobley both are going to be top 10 players in the NBA. And Wemby will be the best player in the NBA, and that's great. Good for him. What a fucking struggle it is to be the best player in the world when you're 7'4" with an 8-foot wingspan. You can shoot 35% from 3 on 10 of them a game and handle like he can. The guy's got everything, Logan. He's got everything, but Chet and Mobley damn near have everything too. Okay, my number 5 is Zion Williamson, who's not on your list, but I think that if he were on your list, this is where you would have him. Like if you're just evaluating him healthy, the guy's an absolute freak. I think he's clearly a top 15 player when healthy, arguably like a top 12, 13 kind of player. It's just stupid what he did this past year when he was on the court. 25, 7, and 5 on 60% true shooting in under 29 minutes per game. On a per minute basis, he was putting up like scoring, rebounding, assist numbers that only Giannis and Jokic were, with really good efficiency, with a plus 8.5 on off differential. Just an incredible offensive player. I mean, one of a kind. Pick and roll, isolation, monster. And obviously when we think about Zion, the first thing we think about is the literally one of a kind combination of unbelievable first step with absurd power in his frame, with incredible leaping ability, with incredible agility in the air, all of these things that make him one of the greatest rim pressuring forces we've ever seen. But where he improved this year was in terms of his touch. The at rim rate dropped a little bit for him, still ridiculously high, but he shot over 50% in the paint non-restricted area, which I think is important in a number of ways. I mean, it's nice for him to have that counter. Also, it spares his body a little bit of just the physical beatdown of getting to the rim effectively every possession, of having to repeatedly have the explosive takeoffs and landings through contact. I think it's very nice that he added that wrinkle at another level this year, and he's still like easily second in the NBA in restricted area attempts, only behind Giannis. He's still getting to the free throw line 8 times a game, so there's no lack of all-time rim pressure from Zion. I also think his passing is the best it's ever been and probably remains underrated, but this is a guy who legitimately like can basically operate as your point guard offensively. And I think that's when he'll be at his best and when his teams will be at their best, when they just put a shit ton of shooting around him and allow him to repeatedly operate out of pick and roll and isolation. He's so damn good there. I even think his defense improved a bit this year. I mean, still quite average on that side of the ball, but when you pair that with the ridiculous offensive volume, scoring, efficiency, and legitimate playmaking value, while he can just collapse the defense whenever he wants, he can break defenses, and there is literally nobody who can guard him one-on-one on the planet. Like, Zion is one of those guys, and there's very few of those guys. Does he exist healthy for a full season? Probably not, unfortunately. We've never seen it. We got the closest that we ever have in 2024. He played 70 games and then was fucking unbelievable in that play-in game against the Lakers, and then he got hurt. So that's unfortunately been the case for his entire career, but I'm just ranking dudes based on when they're healthy, and I think that healthy Zion Williamson is the 5th best power forward in basketball.
Yeah, this is where he'd be for me. I mean, he is a true marvel. He is like a wonder of the world. I don't think there's ever been a player like Zion Williamson. Like, he is... We say all these hyperbolic things, but I mean, they're all true. Like,
they're not hyperbolic.
Yeah, it's actually just fact. It's just what Zion is. He is a freak of nature. And I just wish we could see it sustained. And I wish he didn't have to be in New Orleans, man. Like, I want to see... I'm not asking for a full career. That would be nice. I'm not asking for a decade. Can we get, like... 3 years, man. Can we get him 3 years with a roster built around him and just see what happens? Give him that's a rare archetype. I was going to say a stretch big who can protect the rim. Let's get Miles Turner in there, and then let's get some shooting and some defense, and let's see what happens. I'm praying to the basketball gods that we can at least see that come to fruition before the sun sets on Zion. And I know he's young, but I do feel like we kind of know what we're getting into every season with Zion. It's like a flip of a coin.
Yeah, but it is always kind of weird to me, like, when people hold that against him. And, like, I think it's very easy to underrate Zion because he tends to be hurt, not be healthy. But I really never view that as the fault of the player. I mean, if you want to get on him for some, like, the conditioning stuff, okay, it still hasn't prevented him
I think it has,
from being one of the most effective players in basketball when he's on the court.
I think, obviously, some of the conditioning things, I think it has more to do with that play style. It's so brutal.
He's 6'6", 285. I mean, he shed some weight this past year, but it's a one-of-a-kind frame to be doing the things athletically that he's doing, and that's what makes him so great, and that's also absolutely the biggest reason that it's so hard for him to stay healthy. Who's in your number 4 spot, Logan?
Another modern marvel, that's LeBron James. The fact that he is still doing this at his old age. We all know and love LeBron. The only reason that he's not higher for me is just because he cannot exert himself fully at this age. It's really just that. Like, I've made this take before. A playoff series, a playoff game. Fuck it, man. I don't put LeBron number 1 on your in the NBA. Like, I would
number 1?
I mean, like, I'd probably still take Jokic and Giannis or SGA. Maybe 4. Maybe 4 is a little more reasonable. I wouldn't do it, but I'm saying, if you still feel that way about one game, one playoff series, LeBron, I'm not going to push back too hard. Like, I know what LeBron can still give me. It's just in spurts now, and it's natural. It's still fucking ridiculous that LeBron is this old and he's this high on the power forwards list. This is not normal. We're not going to normalize this. This is freakish that he is still this damn good at this age. And, you know, ironically, I think it... Do you think he's peaked as a jump shooter like over these last 3 seasons, or do you think he peaked as a jump shooter back in Miami?
No, I think the last 2 seasons he's absolutely peaked as a jump shooter. I think all the numbers support that. I mean, the three-point efficiency is basically the same, but the volume is greater and the mid-range shooting is better than it was in the Miami years, 2013, 2014, when he was shooting it really well, but never been better as a jump shooter.
And that's what makes LeBron still so viable. There's a million things. The basketball IQ. He's still an elite playmaker and decision maker. He is a beast of a post scorer now. I don't think some of the numbers will back it up, but I think the fact that he's so strong and that he demands so many double teams on the block still, like, that's still a bread and butter that LeBron can go to. You know, it looks different, right? LeBron's not running high volume pick and roll every single possession like he was a decade ago. It's natural that this is his progression. He's a lot more off ball. He is spotting up a lot more often. He is going to work on the block, but he's still effective in all those areas. And he's a pretty good cutter off ball too. It is really only the physical exertion point that LeBron can't be higher. He is a low impact defensive player at this point in his career. He just cannot go hard on that end as much. And he just can't give you 100% every game. You know, it really does feel, and I know people were saying this 7-8 years ago when he was with Cleveland in the Cupcake East, oh, he's coasting. LeBron's legitimately coasting now, and he does it a lot. But I can't blame the guy. It doesn't change his skill or ability level. Like, yes, he's lost something athletically, clearly. It's going to happen when we get old too, but...
No. I'm going to be moving like Bron.
For sure.
I think I'm going to start moving like Bron when I'm 40. I think when I turn 40 is when I start moving like 09 Bron.
Wait on it. Just hold your breath. Hold your breath.
Man. I'm really counting on it. I'm really hoping for a late life NBA career.
Shout out Andre
Pablo
Ingram.
Prigioni debut.
In comparison, I'll let the cat out of the bag. For the guy in my 3 spot, like KD, I just feel like KD can give you more juice on a game-to-game basis than LeBron can, but come on, man. It's just ridiculous that he's still this damn good at this age. What is the absolute highest you would hear an argument for LeBron on this list? Is it 3, or would you hear an argument for higher?
It's 3, and I think it's really close between him and KD. I don't think that, presuming Jayson Tatum is the level of player he was this past season, you can argue that over an 82-game regular season and playoffs, LeBron delivers more value. I just don't see that case. I could see the case over KD, but I personally do prefer KD. So I have LeBron at number 4 as well. Regular season gave you 24, 8, and 8 on 60% true shooting, light work for a 40-year-old. And like you were saying, man, it's just more up and down with LeBron than it used to be. Like, he had a monster stretch this regular season. February, the guy averaged 29, 10, and 7 on 66% true shooting with clear plus defense. And you're like, hold on, is this guy playing at a top 5 level on the planet right now? He's capable of that in stretches. But then you also have the multiple months of the year where he's 21, 7, and 7 on 58% true shooting with mediocre defense, and the Lakers are better statistically with him off the floor. And then you're like, okay, was LeBron a top 15 player this month? Like, the reality is, to me, he's still a no-brainer top 12 kind of guy for me, but he's too inconsistent to be like top 7, top 8. And you're talking about how, okay, for a playoff game, for a playoff series, you can still argue LeBron, however high. I'm maybe not as high on him in that context as you are. Like, if you look at this series against Minnesota, I thought he had some great moments on both sides of the ball, but also, like, I kept wanting to feel his presence a little more offensively. And it felt like he could just never dial up that volume all the way. He could never dial up that athletic, physical takeover that we became so accustomed to from LeBron over the years.
I agree, and I'm not giving LeBron an out for this. I do think that's partially just because of Minnesota's ability to guard him in single coverage.
Well, but I think that's part of the problem because their ability to switch everything and put bigs onto him, if it's Gobert or Naz Reid, and know that, like, LeBron at this point isn't going to be able to exploit those matchups with his speed, and he's probably going to mostly settle for jumpers in those matchups. Like, you can live with that sort of scheme against LeBron in a way that you couldn't previously. And I thought it was very effective overall for Minnesota, but it's not just that now you're having LeBron live off a more jump shot heavy diet, so he's not getting that hyper efficient offense for himself around the rim. It's also, he doesn't have an elite playmaking impact in this series because he's being brought into more of that one-on-one style, and he's not collapsing the defense to create as many advantages for others. So he's more dependent on the jumper than ever. I mean, that's just completely obvious. He's getting to the rim and the line at career low rates. But as we talked about, he's peaking as a jump shooter. Now, all of a sudden, LeBron can shoot 40% from 3 on high volume and can shoot better from the mid-range than ever. And that's why he is still so damn good. That's why he's still a top 12 player at 40 with some athletic regression. But you do feel the difference in athletic imposition over 48 minutes compared to a couple years ago. And simply put, it is just more valuable for multiple reasons when you can penetrate a defense over and over again and get deep in the paint over and over again. Like, when you are living on a more jump shot heavy diet and you're LeBron James, even if you're making those shots at a good clip, to some extent, it does feel like the defense is like breathing a sigh of relief. And with LeBron these days, he's just not capable of like striking that fear of being downhill over and over and over again and that physically dominant like he was a few years ago. Again, like, sometimes the highs from him are still that of a top 7 player when he's fully engaged defensively, when you feel like he can play with maximum effort, but it's just not nearly every night at this point. I still think it's like one of the craziest things we've seen in sports. I think it's the most impressive longevity. Tom Brady played until he was 45, but he did that because he was able to use his brain and get rid of the ball within 2 seconds. And he was playing a position that is inherently like a very specific role. Basketball is one of the rare sports, one of the rare team sports that demands that you do everything. You have to be able to fill multiple roles offensively and defensively, and there's no hiding you out there in a specific role behind an offensive line, like in whatever way. LeBron has to still be that athletic to be one of the best players in the game. But nevertheless, I mean, Father Time is undefeated. And honestly, LeBron's winning. LeBron's beating Father Time, but he cannot completely defy him.
I mean, it's like Brady. It just doesn't make no damn sense.
I think it's more impressive. I think
really?
It is more insane to be this great as a basketball player at 40 years old in year 23 he's going into now. It's just unfathomable.
I mean, it's comparable. But I mean, it is ridiculous. Another guy that's getting there is still really damn impressive at his old age is Kevin Durant. And I know you were fighting a good fight all year long, trying to steer people in the right way and about KD. And I've still even seen this narrative persisting that, like, the Suns struggles and, like, people putting it on KD. I saw a stat today that blew my mind, man. One, I found this. He was the second most efficient 25-point-per-game scorer in the NBA last season, just behind Nikola Jokic. The stat that blew my mind, Kevin Durant, this last season, became the only player in NBA history to average 25 points per game on 50, 40, 90 splits for 3 straight seasons. Nobody else has ever done that. Like, he is still a super efficient scorer of the basketball.
Hold on, not 90, because he didn't shoot 90 from the line.
Or maybe it was 50-40, but still.
Okay.
25 on 50-40 splits in 3 straight seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what are you going to say? I don't get how can you hate on that? What else does KD need to? KD can't. You know what? Let's clone KD. Let's get 5 KDs, and then let's see what happens, man. And they're going to win the chip. Like, the Suns were such a dumpster fire, and I get he had D-Book, but it's like, that's why I think, I hate attribution errors, man. You were talking about it with quarterbacks on TikTok the other day, and that's the biggest one in sports, but it still persists in the NBA. It's like,
absolutely,
no matter how great one player is, the league is just too talented for one guy to carry a bunch of bums. The Suns proved it's too hard to do it with 2 guys. Like, you need a team. It takes a team to win games, and so I don't buy into that it's KD's fault that the Suns weren't that good. KD did everything in his power, and the percentages are ridiculous. Still, people always talk about he doesn't get downhill as much, and that's a criticism of his game. He was 13th in drive points per game this last season with 9. He was a 93rd percentile isolation scorer. He was a 92nd percentile spot-up scorer. He shot 79% in the restricted area, 53% in the paint non-restricted area in the mid-range, 48% on catch-and-shoot attempts, and 49% on pull-ups. He is still one of the game's elite scorers of the basketball. He is still a good, I won't say great, he's still he's a decent rebounder at this stage in his career, but I'd give him credit as a legitimately good playmaker and decision-maker in your offense, and still a plus defender. But, I mean, it really is that ridiculous scoring value that you are getting on and off ball. It's one of the most unique skill sets in the NBA. And KD, the thing to me that I come back to with KD, Carson, is I just wonder, I don't know, man, how long could KD keep doing this for? And I don't mean, like, this kind of volume, but, like, this efficiency, like, what is going to change that is going to hinder him from continuing to do this as he gets older and older? Like with LeBron, you can make it make sense logically. All right, he's going to lose some athletically, and he's still great. I just use that as an example, right, because his game was so heavily predicated on athleticism. KD's already had all the injuries. He can still shoot over the top of anybody from everywhere on the basketball court. Like, that's just not going to change. So I just wonder, like, I don't know how much longer can he be this effective. Like, I just don't see this skill set just magically disappearing or going anywhere because he keeps getting older.
No, dude. I mean, I've been saying for a while, I think the fact that KD already has top 5 longevity in the history of basketball is underrated. I mean, in the entire history of the NBA, LeBron, of course, has the most seasons averaging 25 points per game. He has 20. Absolutely ridiculous. Then it's KD with 16. Nobody else has more than 12. So, like, we are already talking about a guy who, outside of LeBron, Kareem, Karl Malone, has the best longevity we've ever seen. And like you said, there aren't signs of slowing down. The guy already tore his fucking Achilles in his 30s and then came back and was still playing at an MVP level and still gives you every single year 27, 7, and 4 on 64% true shooting. Because if you can shoot 55% from mid-range and you can shoot 43% from three, and you can still get to the line at a really good rate, and you're still uber efficient at the rim when you do get there, and you're almost 7 feet tall with a one-of-a-kind handle for that size in NBA history, like, still nobody can stop you. No, he's not Kevin Durant he was in 2014. He's not Kevin Durant he was in 2017, but he is still flat out one of the best scorers and the best players on the planet. I do think he's underrated right now. You talk about the Suns stuff. It's a ridiculously horrible situation he was put in, and he was still crazy impactful in that horrible situation with an incredibly redundant roster at the top and with just terribly lacking role players all around them. When Kevin Durant wasn't out there, the Suns were a complete embarrassment. They were 3-17 in games he didn't play, and they were 33-29 with him. That isn't a testament to the fact that we're still talking about flat out superstar value, man. I don't know what is. He single-handedly gave their season a 180 when he was actually on the floor. You mentioned the combination of on-ball efficiency, off-ball efficiency. It's still just like an alien combination in that way to be absolute top-tier isolation. I think he was the most efficient volume isolation scorer in basketball this year. And to be absolute top-tier spot-up catch and shooter and still a good passer and still a good defender, which I do think remains underrated, especially you put him in a system like Houston where he has a bunch of long, athletic, kick-ass dudes around him. He is going to provide that value as a secondary rim protector. He still has ridiculous length, good defensive IQ, held opposing players like 7% below their average field goal percentage at the rim this year. He is a good secondary rim protector, and that value will be appreciated more within the infrastructure of an elite defense. And then, like, offensively, still just like maybe the most naturally gifted scorer we've ever seen in the history of this game. And at 37 years old, he remains one of the best, almost 37 years old. And like in that shitty Phoenix situation was still top tier in scoring production and efficiency. So I just think every knock that people try to like use against KD really isn't valid. Like, oh, the Suns didn't make the playoffs. Okay, I already read off the fact that they were 33-29 with him, 3-17 without him, and their roster was an abomination. Oh, KD hasn't been that great in the playoffs. Last two times we've seen KD in the postseason, he's averaged 28.5, 8 and 5 on over 61% true shooting. The standard for him is just so astronomically high, especially at that point when people were still talking about him like, okay, is he a top 3 player on the planet? Now the bar isn't quite as insanely high for KD, but I always think about that Minnesota series, and like that's considered a disappointment for KD, and to some extent I get it, but he still averaged 27 a game on 65% true shooting against a ridiculously great physical-ass defense that was destroying everybody else on his team. The Denver series from 2023 is like considered a disappointment from KD. And no, he didn't play his best. He still averaged 30, 10, and 5 on solid efficiency. Like, I just think this guy is so overcriticized, so underappreciated. And right now, I do think I slightly prefer his ridiculous scoring value, his ridiculous efficiency, and his ridiculous versatility as a scorer to LeBron's overall value, knowing that LeBron, right, obviously is up and down defensively at this point. I don't think he has an advantage over KD there. I think the scoring gap is now bigger in KD's favor than the playmaking gap is in LeBron's favor. And like, he's just a few years younger, and with his truly unique skill set, as we've touched on, that scoring value has just held a bit more, and it's held in like a totally unique way in NBA history. So you could talk me into either one. To me, if I look at a guy who it's like you can slot into any team right now and he improves them by a greater margin, especially if it's like in that ceiling raising mold, to me it's KD. The fit is a little bit cleaner. The scoring value is greater. The efficiency is so superb, and I would lean on him.
I mean, I would hear an argument for KD at 2 if somebody wanted to make it. I would hear him out. I would disagree, but I would hear him out because I still think there is a little bit of a scoring gap between him and Jayson Tatum, just ease and reliability. Like, Tatum's jumper is waxed and waned sometimes, but Tatum's overall impact is what gets him into this 2 spot. And I'm really hoping he can make a full recovery. Just a brutal injury that Tatum suffered, but He is one of the game's elite perimeter defenders and just defenders in general, his ability to defend 1 through 5, and a really elite rebounder too. So great at ending possessions. And then offensively, can score at every single level and is a legitimately really good playmaker and decision maker at this point in his career. Like, he's a power forward, but he's effectively running point guard most of the time for this Boston team. And I think he has gotten a little bit more reliable as a scorer. It's not perfect. It's not exactly what I want. I still expect more from Tatum because my expectations for Tatum are so high. But he just does everything at such a high level. Do you think, I'll ask this, do you think Tatum has an A trait? Something that you would say is like, right, because I think Tatum's got a B plus in a lot of different areas. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you think he does at an A level?
A or A plus, probably not, but A minus, B plus, there's a shit ton, like you said. I mean, almost everything he does at an A minus or a B plus level, if it's the driving and finishing, if it's the self-created scoring, isolation, post up, the playmaking has gotten so great, the overall defense, the rebounding at his position, like his A plus trait is his versatility ultimately. It is his all-around impact. I do think he's the most versatile player in basketball, but in terms of like a superpower, like Giannis's athleticism, rim pressure, does he have that? No. Does he have Steph Curry shooting? No. Does he have Jokic's passing, Jokic's all-around offense? There are numerous A-plus traits that he has. No. Tatum doesn't have that. And that's also why I think that he's not one of the all-time greats, top 3 player kind of guys. But he is so damn good at so much that I thought he was a top 5 player this year. And yeah, I really hope that he comes back the same. But no, not an A trait necessarily, but he's so damn good at so much.
Yeah, and like you were saying with KD, I think Tatum's just, because he has this such well-rounded impact, I mean, you could drop Tatum into any situation and he would fit and he would work and he would make whatever team he plays on better. I'm really hoping that when we do see Tatum return, it doesn't zap any of his, obviously I think there's going to be a ramp-up period and an adjustment, right? He's not going to come back and just magically be 100%. But I hope when Tatum does get back to that level that he hasn't lost anything. And I really hope that he can – Tatum's got the ability, I still think, to score more efficiently, man. Even like post-injury, like he's gotten better in so many different areas. I really think over the past couple of seasons we've seen such an improvement in ball handling, decision-making, and playmaking. Like, I think he's great there as your offensive lead guy in terms of decision-making and just the reads that he can make. Like, that was a major, major shortcoming for Tatum in that first finals run when they played the Golden State Warriors. That's not an issue anymore. And I do think he's stronger, and I think he's a better driver. I think he's the best he's ever been in that regard. I still do think he can be more efficient. I think that's the one area that I'm waiting on Tatum to figure out. But, like, that's my one gripe, and he's still that's my one gripe, and he's a 27, 28 point per game scorer. You know what I mean? He's a great rebounder. He's a great defender. He's a great playmaker. But I still think he can be a better scorer. But, I mean, if that's my gripe and you can give me all of that, come on, he's a beast. So I would hear an argument if you wanted to make one for KD just because he is such a damn good scorer at this point in his career. But I do think Tatum's all-around impact just exceeds that.
Yeah, and the ability to impact the game in every single way over 82 plus. I'm not factoring availability into mine. I understand that this is now probably poorly timed because he tore his Achilles. But before that, Tatum had been one of the most available players in basketball. And so, again, it's tough with an Achilles tear, right? We just don't know. It's the most devastating injury a basketball player can suffer. I'm hopeful that Tatum, at 27, should be able to take more than a full year off because he suffered the injury in early mid-May, and now he's going to miss this entire year. Won't have to actually play NBA basketball again until October 2026. So, like, I hope that the length of time that he has for the recovery and all things, him not being too old, allow him to make a full recovery. I'm going to evaluate him based on what we saw this past year, and to me, that was pretty clearly the second best power forward in basketball. Could you make the case that Kevin Durant is a better offensive player? Absolutely. Kevin Durant is clearly the better scorer, but it's tough for me with the difference in terms of defensive impact. Not to say that it's massive, but it is significant. Tatum's just like the epitome of the do-it-all forward in today's NBA. I mean, he is like the fully realized version of that modern four, not the Mobley modern four, who is like that 4-5 hybrid, which is the one archetype that thrives, but the other big wing kind of guy who can attack mismatches, but who can also be effectively your point guard and run a shit ton of pick and roll and is a really high level scorer and playmaker both, and is a high level interior scorer and 3-point shooter, and then defensively can defend on the perimeter a high level, but is also an elite rebounding guy for his position, and also brings you value as a team defender and as a help defender. Like, that's just what he does, man. And that's why even when the shot is off, he's such a supremely impactful player. I feel like the 2024 playoffs are the epitome of that, even though it's some of the worst scoring we've seen from him, some of the worst shooting we've seen from him. His ability in the NBA Finals to be your point guard on offense and create advantage after advantage after advantage, right? Highlighting the defensive weak point, usually Luka Doncic, and getting past him and making the right read over and over again. And then defensively enabling their entire scheme by being able to play the 5 on that side of the ball, hold down the defensive glass, match up physically with centers. Like, it's just an incredible weapon to have on your basketball team. He gives you so many ways to win around him. And I thought this was his best season in terms of the regular season. I thought that he got even a little bit better as a passer. I thought that it was comparable as a scoring season versus last year, but that passing improvement I thought was really, really impressive. He's one of the elite playmaking forwards in basketball. And then the playoffs, I do think were a letdown. I think that those first 2 games against the Knicks were absolutely atrocious. I mean, the fact that he was completely incapable of beating switches, if it was Cat, if it was Brunson, these guys who in the regular season he picked apart over and over again. Now all of a sudden he's settling for 15 threes in the first game and he can't make any of them. Just like living off the jumper, and the jumper left him. That was disappointing. But it's 2 games. And I just think with the totality of what he's done, the level he's been at overall, he's earned this spot. Clear. Signed, sealed, delivered. So I have Jayson Tatum at number 2 as well. Number 1, Logan, though, even easier, even clearer.
The unstoppable monster that is Giannis Antetokounmpo. You know, I don't know if there's a player I feel worse for in the NBA than Giannis. I mean, I'm sure there is somebody, like maybe Tyrese Halliburton for the circumstances in the NBA Finals and how he got injured, but Giannis has had such a Herculean carry job on his shoulders the past few seasons. Like, this past year, he had a 10.3 on-off differential. His inability to stay healthy, the stuff that happened with Damian Lillard, like that never coming to fruition. Like, it's so disappointing. There's so many realities in which they come together and they have at least one playoff run. You know, that's all I wanted. You know, we always talked about in the regular season, Carson, about how disappointing the duo was, that they never fully gelled and figured out their fit together. But damn, they couldn't even get one run together where both of these guys were healthy, and you just got to feel for him. Like, Giannis is so damn good. I think he's got one of the highest, we talked about it, one of the highest forward peaks in NBA history. Mm-hmm. He gave you 30, 12, and 7 on 62.5% true shooting in the regular season, and then in the playoffs, 33, 15, and 7 on 65% true shooting. Like, that is ridiculous. Yeah. He's one of the most physically intimidating and physically imposing players in basketball history, one of the best rim pressures of all time. He has legitimately become a great passer and playmaker. He's one of the game's all-time defensive collapsers. And we talked about this in our Forward Peak series because I picked this version of Giannis. He's legitimately added a mid-range game to his bag. He has a real counter for that downhill pressure that he has if defenses are going to load up on him. And he's effectively eliminated the three-point jumper from his game, which I think has made him all the more efficient as a basketball player. I think he's one of the game's greatest offensive players, like, that we've seen at this point. Like, what you were getting out of Giannis while still being an elite rebounder and a really good defender. He's not the peak powers that he was defensively. He can't impose himself the way he could 5 years ago. That's obvious, but he's an elite offensive player and one of the most dominant in NBA history. This was a no-brainer.
Yeah. I wrote down a lot of notes for every other spot on this list, and for Giannis at number 1, I wrote he's Giannis. It's that simple, man. I mean, you're talking about the production, 30, 12, 7, 62% true shooting. Guy's done that every single year for the last 7, basically. I mean, it's incredible the peak that he's at, and I do think sometimes can go a little under the radar for being as monumentally great as he is. And I think that we're probably guilty of that because we are serial Jokic and Shea Glazers here, okay? And have been for a long time, been on that side. But just generally in the consensus, like Jokic is the best player in the world. And so he's the guy who gets buzz having that title. And then Shea this year was the guy who was on the best team and who was the MVP and who ascended to like that all-time level. He was incredible in 2024, but got even better this year. And it feels like those are the two guys at the absolute top of the sport who get talked about the most when Giannis is right there in that top 3. And because of team circumstances, is being robbed of opportunities to contend in some of the greatest years of his career and some of the greatest individual seasons we've ever seen from a player. So I think you laid out a lot of it really nicely. It's no surprise to see Giannis walk into regular season numbers that from basically anybody else in NBA history, you would do a double check and you probably wouldn't believe. That's just what he does. But I thought that this was about as impressive a playoff series as we've ever seen from him. And what's crazy is like, it was no surprise whatsoever. If you had asked me what Giannis would do against the Pacers, I would have said, yeah, he'll average 33, 35 a game, 15 and 7. I mean, we talked about
we
this.
did a podcast. Yeah, I was going to say
points in the first round of anybody. Like, that was a matchup that he has utterly dominated for the last few years. They just do not have anybody who can remotely deal with his combination of size, power, physicality. Not that really anybody does, but there are other teams who can guard him better in the aggregate than the Pacers. Nevertheless, I just watched this guy pirouette and bulldoze his way to the basket over and over and over again and go through this defense like they were tissue paper. It's incredible the level of offensive player he's become. And I think Bucks fans probably have a lot of reasons to be feeling down because so much has gone wrong. Your core around Giannis has been regressing for years, and then the Dame trade did not pan out whatsoever. The fit didn't work. The roster around them just was not nearly good enough, and now you have Dame tearing his Achilles, and maybe you're excited about Miles Turner, but that also comes at the cost of stretching and waiving Dame and severely compromising your roster building for the future in that way. And you've made a couple of solid moves on the margins, but if you look at the Bucks roster around Giannis, it's a huge disappointment, and it's been a huge disappointment for the last couple years. But you do have Giannis, man. And if there is anything to be excited about this year, it's just seeing what you can do with the full-on Giannis ball approach. Because Giannis was so ridiculously good without Dame this year. Per 75 possessions, when he was on the floor without Dame, guy averaged 33, 12, and 8 points per 75 possessions on 65% true shooting. He was more productive. He was more efficient. And the team had a 120 offensive rating. Like, if you just put the ball in his hands and you put shooting around him, this guy is an unstoppable downhill force, and he's such a good playmaker now. He is going to lead you to be a really, really good team offense. And so that's the upside, I think, and I think that they upgraded in terms of the archetype you want with Giannis, right, with the stretch big who can protect the rim at a solid level. Don't want to overstate who Miles Turner is, but he is a good player, and he isn't the sort of mold that you want to pair with Giannis. Obviously, I think your expectations have to be very limited for the Bucks overall, but Giannis Antetokounmpo is a superhero, and I think he is the only possible outcome for them having any sort of notable success is him just dragging them to 40-something wins, and I think that he can do it. He's just that special. So there's no question that he is number 1 on this list, and it's not even close. It's not a conversation.
I don't know, man. I think about that often. Just like trying not to take guys for granted. You know, like we do it with we talked about that with like Jordan and the guard peaks, with LeBron. Like you can kind of become numb to these kind of things because it's just so Jokic even, you know, it's just become so routine. The bar is just so high for these guys that you can take it for granted. But you're right. I think the way you said it is if anybody else is putting up those numbers, you go,
Yeah.
Damn, man, am I reading that right? Like, it is, but it's just regular for Giannis. I know Bucks fans aren't going to like this. I do hope that Giannis can move on to a team where he can play competitive, real championship potential basketball.
I completely agree. Shout out loyalty, big ups to loyalty, but there comes a point where it's just like you have to accept that you are in a fucked situation and you're just too great to be spending your prime years doing this. But what do I know? Giannis, it's your call. Personally, I would like to see you in a situation where you can really contend, but that's going to be up to you. Giannis, we will not take you for granted, and Logan, I will never take you for granted. Your brilliant mind, your brilliant lyricism. You know, when you just said the phrase, I think about that often, all I could think about was get paper often. My Heat got you stuck on the bench, Rafer Alston. And you knew that's what I was thinking about, didn't you? Because the bar is that iconic. And also, you play it for me every single night. You put my headphones on, you tuck me into bed, you give me my glass of milk, and then you play that line for me over and over and over again. I don't know what you're conditioning me to do.
I also drink a glass of milk before I go to sleep, man.
But I'm ready to go to battle for you. I want you to know that.
We should write a rap song.
I'm ready to fight your holy war, Logan.
I don't have one, but thank you.
Well, you don't have to be humble. I think we all know that you are the Messiah. To me, at least. That's sacrilegious. Well, I'm not saying for any specific existing religion. I'm saying for your own religion.
Of bald people.
I think you could lead the balds.
For my cult of bald people?
Absolutely, I think you could lead some sort of bald cult.
I am recruiting anyone. If you want to shave your head and join, you're welcome. Good. But you do have to shave your head. That is the one prerequisite.
Well, it's always a good idea to start a cult.
I mean, when has that not worked out for somebody,
profitable.
Man?
Well, they tend to work out pretty well for the cult leader. Everybody else, not so great. But you, Logan, with your big shiny head leading an army of shiny heads, I don't know. It compels me. The idea compels me. So something to consider going forward. For now, we'll just stick to doing our sports podcast. And if you guys want to see more of this stuff, you know where to find it. YouTube, we've got all our full-length episodes. Trivia collabs with our friends. Ranking stuff like this with the current NBA. Ranking historical stuff. Doing all-time drafts. We've got it all, baby. Right here, right now, live and in the flesh. You can also listen to the pod across all audio platforms. And you can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSession, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can also join our Discord if you want, where you can name Logan to be a sort of Dune-style prophet, if you would like. Just something to consider. Is he the Lisan al-Gaib? Is he the Mahdi? Is he the Quetzat Haderach? All of these titles, personally, I believe do apply to him. So, with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.